Hello, BookTube. I have a bit of a discussion video to do today. I'll try to keep it brief. I did a version of this a little while ago this morning, and it went on and on and on, and that's not good for anybody. So, but it's a BookTube response video. A number of BookTube videos of one kind or another that I've watched since late summer that have been bugging me. They've been sticking in my craw, and they've needed a response. And I think all the videos that we make and all the interaction between those videos and whatnot, and interactions on Voxer and on social media and on email, form their own kind of response to the videos that I'm talking about. But I wanted to make an explicit response to those videos because, okay, there's a movie scene that I want to reference for you. It's from the movie Starship Troopers, the great science fiction movie Starship Troopers. Those of you who haven't seen the movie, I don't know what to say to you. You should watch it. Of course you should. But it involves humanity fighting a war with giant insect aliens. And there are all kinds of them. Some of them fly. There are warrior ants that are as big as rhinos. There are gigantic artillery bugs that are, as big as buildings. And they infest a lot of alien worlds. The humans have some other worlds, and there's a constant source of war between the two species. And at one point in the movie, we are introduced to an outpost of humanity called Fort Joe Smith on a distant planet, where a group of Mormon zealots found a surface station, a science fiction surface station on this planet, sort of plant their flag on this world, little knowing that the world is swarming with bugs of all kinds. And the bugs are, of course, infuriated by the fact that humans are there and decide to mount a massive attack right when our heroes are there to investigate why the station has gone silent. Right when our group of space marines are there, a massive horde of these bugs attack the station. First, wave after wave after wave of those warrior bugs, those car-sized warrior bugs, gigantic mandibles and all that sort of stuff. Very largely bulletproof, takes a lot of firepower to kill even one of them, and there are hundreds of thousands of them, and we see them just rampaging in a massive sea of aliens. There are flying bugs who can decapitate someone by ripping their heads off as they fly right by, and who also take a huge amount of ordnance to take down. And then later on in the fight, as things are looking hairy, the Space Marines have already called for evacuation because they know they're outnumbered at 10,000 to 1. Later on in the fight, those enormous building-sized artillery bugs start to appear, and they have the ability to belch acid and are largely impregnable to gunfire. And there's not just one of them. There are many of them. They tower over the sea of smaller warrior bugs. And our heroes suffer lots of damage, and a few of them die in the course of that scene. It's very exciting filmmaking. And the survivors board the transport as it's being surrounded by these bugs, and they make it off just in time. And as they're pulling off, we get a wide shot of an absolute ocean of bugs of all sizes swarming over and tearing apart Fort Joe Smith. I often think about that scene whenever I am extracting myself from a horrible situation at the very last minute. Whenever I'm thinking that way, I reflect, I think back on that scene, a perfect visual iconography of people getting out just at the last second when the getting is good, and seeing what they're leaving behind. An unbeatable swarm, hellscape of aliens. And there's a reason why I bring up that scene, because a number of videos that I've seen about BookTube, specifically people leaving BookTube and deciding to make videos on the way out, they start their videos. These are former BookTubers who've decided to leave BookTube, either repurpose their channel for something else or stop making videos altogether. And they start their videos with an endless list of disclaimers in the 21st century way, which is very cowardly and also, as we'll see, explicitly deceitful. They'll start with a huge number of disclaimers. I'm not throwing shade on anyone. None of this is pointed. None of this is personal. I'm only saying what was true for me. I'm not making broader observations about the community. I'm not saying that BookTube is broken. I'm not saying that I'm jaded. I'm not saying that I'm happy I'm gone. It was just the right decision for me at the right time. All very well and anodyne. Sounds perfectly harmless. But if a person says that, if they make that disclaimer, And then they go on to describe that scene at Fort Joe Smith. Well, the Marines, the Space Marines who are getting out of Fort Joe Smith at the last minute, covered in blood and bug guts, are not saying, well, you know, that station could work for some people. I mean, it's a little bit of a rough situation, but, you know, I'm sure I made a lot of mistakes too. If you still want to live in Fort Joe Smith, go right ahead. No shade intended. They're not saying that. Obviously, they're not saying that. They're saying we got out just before a disastrous situation became murderous. And if a person makes a Why I Left BookTube video and starts with all of those disclaimers about no shade is intended, this is just my story, I'm not attacking the community, and then they go on to describe a scene like that, well then, they're lying to you. Then what they're saying is, I left BookTube because there was nothing that was salvageable, because the bugs were in control of the situation. I've seen too many of those videos in the last four months. Maybe it's just a fad. Maybe when people decide to stop making BookTube videos, they feel like the only way they can legitimate that decision is to make such a video. I don't think it does anybody any good, and especially does harm to the number of people, hundreds of people, who are looking at BookTube for the first time. They're discovering it for the first time. And of those hundreds of people, maybe a dozen or so are thinking, maybe I should start a channel of my own. Maybe instead of just passively absorbing all of this stuff, maybe I should start to contribute to it. If one of those people, if those people find those Fort Joe Smith videos first, who knows what they'll think? Especially if those videos aren't true. If they aren't true. Not just not true in that you're saying that you're not criticizing BookTube when the next 20 minutes is going to be you criticizing BookTube, but also that the criticisms of BookTube aren't true. Even when you get around to making them. But they don't apply across the board. And again, the community that we all have here, the fun that we all have here, is its own refutation of those videos, but it's not explicit, and it's not condensed, and it's not localized, and it's not immediately visible to an outsider. So I thought I would make a video, a discrete video of stuff we already know. If you're a part of a BookTube community, whether you're a commentator or you make videos or both, you already know these things. But I thought I'd make a video about 5 gifts that BookTube gives. And by gift, I mean just that. Something that is handed to you, that you didn't do anything for, that you're really going to like, and that you don't owe anybody for. And gift number 1 is the feeling of book discussion. Quite a few people, when they make BookTube newbie tags, including all the people who made these Fort Joe Smith leaving BookTube videos, they all made BookTube newbie tags at one point or another. And when people make BookTube newbie tags, a lot of them will say, the reason I'm starting a BookTube channel, one of the big reasons, is because I don't have anybody to talk to about books with in my real life. My friends aren't all that bookish. My family, God help me, isn't all that bookish. My schoolmates think it's a little weird. That's a common experience. It wasn't mine. When I started a BookTube channel, I had plenty of people to talk about books with endlessly. I mean, not other book reviewers, publicists and publishers in the book world who often are perfectly happy to jaw about books in an afternoon. They don't do it as often as you would think. They're so busy with other aspects of their job that they love just talking about books. And if you take all of that out of the equation, I still have Deb. Deb and I could chat about books like 2 old Donegal housewives over a back fence, literally until the cows came home. So I didn't have that problem myself, but quite a few people. It comes up on BookTube newbie tags over and over again. That the person decided to get involved because it's a bookish community and they don't have that in their real life. And the first BookTube gift is that book discussion community is absolutely real. It is absolutely real. If you're doing this right, if you're not being fake about it, then when you set up your camera or your phone or your iPad or whatever, it's only going to feel awkward for the first few seconds. Then you're going to feel like you actually are talking to bookish friends. And that feeling's not going to go away when you turn the camera off. That feeling is real. It might seem very strange to some of my fellow denizens of the 20th century, but the 21st century, if it's taught us anything, has taught us that is real. It's not like that is a substitute for reality. That is as real as reality. So that's BookTube gift number 1, is that those discussions become possible. BookTube gift number 2 is the recommendations that you get. Just by being involved in BookTube, whether you're watching a recommendations video or not, just by watching someone's videos over and over again, whether they're just doing discussions or tag videos or whatever, or vlogs, the recommendations are going to be overwhelmingly profuse. And they are critically different from the recommendations you'll find on, for instance, Goodreads, in that they're more personal and more passionate. It takes very little time if you're watching the videos of somebody that they're filming in their bedroom with cats walking across the screen and their real life intruding in their thoughts. It takes very little time for you to assess when you're watching that person what kind of a reader they are. And if you watch hundreds of videos, you're going to come away with dozens of people who are the kind of reader you want to pay attention to. And that's no offense meant to the ones that aren't. It's just we're all different kinds of readers, and you'll know. And my point is that you'll know it much more intensely, much more immediately than you will in an aggregate site like Goodreads. And it will do a lot for the borders of your book reading. Your book recommendation flow will suddenly increase 1,000-fold. And that's just a gift. No one's trying to do that. There is no algorithm tracking what you do and don't take note of in your notebook. It's just a free and clear gift. And the third gift of BookTube is the bookish intensity. The intensity that surrounds your bookish life will increase. Your critical awareness will increase, obviously. If you are, instead of just buying and reading books, if you're now knowing that some of them you're going to want to talk about coherently on camera, that's going to start to make you think more critically about books, even if you don't tend to do that. And if you do tend to do that, it's going to make you do more of it. You're going to start to think about books in a more intense way. And not just the critical stuff either, but in terms of the connections that are going to start to form. You will no longer be alone in your bookish world. That's part of what my book gift number 1 was, is that you will no longer be alone in that world. When you're at the library and you're browsing titles, people are going to start to come to mind. Not just connections with other kinds of books, but people that you watch on BookTube are going to start to come to mind. So-and-so mentioned this book. He wasn't specifically talking about it, but he mentioned that he really liked it. And something about it is clicking with me, and here it is right here. And I would never have thought that otherwise. That happens all the time. Once you get invested in the BookTube world, in a BookTube community. And one of the key points that comes up here, and I'm going to hit this a little bit harder at the end of this video, is that is directly proportionate to and dependent on the community. There is not just one BookTube community, there are thousands of them. And which one you latch onto, or ones you latch onto, is going to directly affect the breadth of that increased bookish intensity. But that increased bookish intensity is there, definitely. Another just free and clear gift of BookTube is the fun, the sheer fun of it. There is a lot of fun, for instance, in what we would call the production side of BookTube, of sitting in front of a camera, of prowling your bookshelves and assessing what you want to pick, for instance, in answer to a particular tag, or to make a video where you're stirring somebody's thoughts or delving into a theme. The raw material of that video, which books you'll pick, what order, how you'll talk about them, the more you do it, the more that sorts itself out in very little time. And then the fun elements start to percolate to the surface. What fun ways will you twist and turn that? Also, the personal fun. You start to know people on BookTube, in the comments field, on social media, via email, in Voxer. You start to know people, and you start to be able to josh with them, to poke fun at them. That sort of thing is a lot of fun. And it's part of BookTube. And again, it's dependent on the kind of neighborhood that you find in BookTube, but it is real. And it will bring a smile to your face. I am sure that I am not the only BookTuber who has had that element of his life just flat out improved by the minimal time and effort that it takes to be part of BookTube. And then gift number 5 is something that you hear about all the time. You hear about it in all of those BookTube newbie tags. And it's connected with a lot of the other gifts that I've been mentioning here, and that is the community aspect. Because it does form. It inevitably does form, unless you are intentionally working to make sure that it doesn't. There are a handful of booktubers, even low subscriber booktubers, who actively don't seem to want to be part of any community. They make videos, but they don't ever respond to comments in their comments field. They don't ever collaborate. They don't ever do tags. They don't ever mention any other booktubers. They're insular. There are still people who do that. I don't understand it myself. That would seem to me to be volunteering for an unpaid job. Just the drudgery of an unpaid job. Why would you do it? What is the payback other than that? Except maybe the dream of having 150,000 subscribers and getting a $3,000 check every week, which just plain and simple isn't going to happen. So why you would dream that, I have no idea. But for the most part, a community starts to develop. You've heard that people say that in their BookTube newbie tag, that's the reason they're going to do it. It's a hackneyed thing by this point on BookTube, but it is nevertheless real. You will start to make connections with people. You'll start to like their comments. They'll start to like your videos. You maybe will reach out to them in email. You maybe will reach out to them in Voxer with read-alongs, book reading groups that happen over apps like Voxer. Maybe Zoom chats with them will happen. Maybe emailing them about all sorts of things, not just your bookish life, even getting to know people and making friends in real life. I know for a fact that this can happen, and it only happens because of BookTube. And that is great. That is just a pure and simple gift. But, like so many other gifts that I'm mentioning here, it depends on the specific neighborhood that you latch onto on BookTube. And that is changeable. You are not locked in to any neighborhood at all. So if you are unfortunate enough to be watching any of these Fort Joe Smith Why I Left BookTube videos, you're going to hear nightmare stories about how it was all so material, it was all so acquisitive, and there was so much backbiting and drama. The BookTube drama seemed to be taking over the whole of the experience, where every week it was a new pile-on to some new drama. Even when people didn't seem all that genuinely upset by it, they felt like they had to for drama's sake. Or the backbiting, where all it was constantly people just spitting acid on other people about how much money they spend on books, or how much money they spend on clothes when they go to cons, or the status symbol of anything like this. And it all just got too much for me, and I had to leave, because that is just so toxic, and who needs that in their life? And if you're watching videos like that and you're seeing things like that, you might think that that is exactly what it's intended to be, which is a soup to nuts, sweeping, broadcloth condemnation of the whole platform of BookTube. And that broadcloth condemnation is totally wrong. It's totally inaccurate to do. It's totally misleading. That's bad enough. If the ex-booktuber also starts that broadcloth condemnation off by saying they're not issuing a broadcloth condemnation, then it's not only wrong, it's deceitful. It's them trying to do the classic 21st century social media inspired gimmick of saying, I absolutely don't believe X, so don't hate me, don't at me for X, and now I want to tell you what I believe, and that what I believe is X. That is a standard now 21st century gimmick that was born of social media, where people can be, I don't even think the word hypocrite covers the territory. They can be schizophrenic, just completely split-brained, where they will say, and this is true from the Oval Office on down, where they will say, I absolutely do not believe X because I believe X, and think that they can get away with it, think that the disclaimer saves them from the reality of what they're saying. If you have watched some of those videos, you may have come out, especially if you're new to BookTube, you may have come away from them with the idea that all of it is just that toxic, that the whole thing is the escape scene from Fort Joe Smith. That isn't true at all. And I wanted to make a video where somebody, even an old coot, comes right out and says that. There are all kinds of neighborhoods on BookTube. There are all kinds of groups of friends. If you find yourself in a group of BookTube, a neighborhood of BookTube, that acts that way, then leave it. Then leave it. And find some other neighborhood that doesn't act that way. I myself, right now, although most of you are watching this, are part of a neighborhood, a small 200, 300 channel neighborhood of BookTube. Doesn't dream of doing anything like that. Not even dream of it. There's nothing like that involved in any way in any of the BookTube channels that I watch, except the ones that I watch just to sort of monitor, but not the feeling of sitting down with old friends. That is an experience that I have all day long. I subscribe to hundreds of channels, and I have that experience all day long. But that experience is completely genuine. It has nothing to do with any of the toxic tea-spilling aspects of BookTube that these Why I Left BookTube videos are always excoriating. All those people needed to do was find a different neighborhood, a neighborhood that isn't addicted to drama where its denizens actually have drama channels on the side. A neighborhood that isn't addicted to appearances or first editions or spending $200 on brand new books every month and then ostentatiously not reading them. There are all kinds of neighborhoods on BookTube, and there are plenty that are completely genuine. They don't do anything like that. And if that's what you're looking for, just a genuine neighborhood full of people that you can get to know, whose book talk will be ringing in your head even when you're in a used bookstore by yourself, well, that's available. Don't be fooled by the Fort Joe Smith Why I Left BookTube videos that I'm talking about. If you happen to see one, don't be fooled by it into thinking, well, I don't know, this BookTube thing, I was going to explore it, but if it's that bad, who needs that in their life? BookTube is full of gifts. It doesn't have to be that way at all. There are plenty of neighborhoods, and plenty of them are really, really nice. I won't for now get into the psychoanalyzing of why someone would make an intentionally deceitful video about why they left BookTube, characterizing one small sliver as the whole platform. My guess would be that those people have in their lives, for whatever complex of reasons, stopped reading. Off camera. Stopped reading for pleasure, or, lapsed it down to the national average of a book a year, and don't like that and want to blame someone for it instead of fixing it. That would be my guess. My guess, if I had to psychologize these people from a distance, my guess would be that their reading habits have changed and they want to blame somebody. But whether or not that's true, whatever the reason is, I want to make sure to assure all of you who are new to BookTube and who may even be considering starting your own channel that the water is fine. I have been saying this for years, and my own baptism of fire on BookTube was not all that pleasant. And if after all these years I can still say that, then you have to trust that it's true. Find the right people. Find people that you would like to know in real life. And also Brian at Bookish. and watch them. And your problems will be solved. These Fort Joe Smith problems will be solved. So there you go. That is a Gifts of BookTube video that is heavily laced with Starship Trooper references. I might even put one in the title. But I had to make a response because these things were bothering me, and I feel better already that I made a response defending this thing that has meant so much to me, that has been such a pure positive in my life. Now that I will shut up on the subject and I will wrap this video up. But I will be back. We have plenty of other bookish things to talk about. Thank you, BookTube.